Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Design Review Board, August 8th, 2024. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do I have any declaration of conflicts today? Resident Board Member Brian Gillis is not with us today because he has declared a conflict, but we have Mary Nicholson and we have Councillor McCabe online with us today. Can I have an adoption or an approval of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Beck. Okay. Seconded by Aaron. All those in favor? Councillor McCabe
In favor, thank you.
and Mary? Mary, are you there? We just need to know, Mary, if you're there and can approve the agenda. Okay. If you're muted, maybe unmute. Okay.
I did. Can you hear me?
We can hear
Now?
you now. That's great. Just looking for your approval of the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, moving on. An adoption of the minutes from our July 15th, 2024 meeting. Can I get somebody to move that? Moved by Councillor Beck.
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Okay, all those in favor, Councillor McCabe and Mary?
Yes, in favor.
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Any business arising from those minutes? Okay, seeing none, we have one report this evening, and that's 2733 Weymouth Street, PID 337444 and 337451. And we have David Gundrum here, our Manager of Development and Planning. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Chair Yankoff. I'll just start the presentation here. Oh, try it. Sure. Oh, there we go. Okay. No, actually, I could just call slide if you want to hit the button, Jason. Okay. Next slide, please.
That was working for a second. Sometimes it takes that additional power on or something.
Sure.
My slide buttons aren't working.
Try the space bar. No? Okay.
Expensive. Back on camera.
Okay. Okay, so the following request is request for design review to allow for a 3-story multi-unit residential building on the subject property, addressed as 33 Weymouth Street, PID numbers 337451, 337444, and the subject property is shown here on the image on the screen, being the vacant lot, interior lot on the west side of Weymouth Street. The following are the images of the development proposal, showing different streetscape perspectives. So the development proposal would be a 3-story multi-unit residential building as shown, and it would have a pitched roof on the top. Following is a summary of the zoning bylaw requirements for the property within the downtown neighborhood zone. I'll just note for board's information that the development proposal would meet all of the requirements of the downtown neighborhood zone that pertain to this type of multi-unit residential development. I'll just note on here that while it's shown that the proposed front yard setback would not be met, there is additional provision under section 29 of the bylaw that allows for a development in this zone to have a setback that's in line with the buildings around it. So even though it's deficient on this one point of contact on the zoning bylaw, there's additional provisions that would allow it to meet the requirements. So some additional context. As mentioned, the property is an interior lot on the west side of Weymouth Street. It's located north of King Street, shown here, and south of Dorchester Street, shown here. Located within the downtown neighborhood zone, is adjacent to established commercial and mixed-use residential uses. Subject property, as noted, is vacant and contains no buildings or structures. As per section 7.1 of the zoning and development bylaw, new buildings within the 500 lot area are required to undergo the design review process to ensure that the architectural design of proposed developments within the 500 lot area maintain a high quality of design and are constructed with a consistent type and quality of materials. From a design perspective, new buildings in the 500 lot area are to complement and be compatible with existing buildings on surrounding properties and are to blend rather seamlessly with the existing streetscape. So the applicants, in support of the design review submission, have submitted a design package which contains facade drawings, elevation drawings, as well as a site plan for the proposed development. All of these have been included in the report in your agenda package as appendices and attachments to the report. As per section 3.14.3 of the zoning and development bylaw, this design package was forwarded to a design reviewer to conduct a review of the proposed development for conformity with the intent of the zoning bylaw, including the design standards for the 500 lot area and the criteria for evaluation of design review. The design reviewer provided recommendations as follows with regard to building, site and orientation, as well as materials and finishes, along with an overall summary statement for the development. So the recommendations of the design reviewer, the two key recommendations are as follows. Regarding siting and orientation, the design reviewer recommended to align the street facade of the proposed building with the neighboring buildings just inside the property line to perpetuate and strengthen the traditional street edge, drop the building closer to the level of the sidewalk as it does continue the tradition of doors close to the street, and this will allow the ramp to be shorter that can be accommodated in the resulting smaller front yard. Second recommendation concerns materials and finishes. The design reviewer quoted, "The elements of the facade are recommended to be of traditional and honest wood construction. This includes the ship clapboards, window frames, and sash assemblies in all trim. The wood elements are to have a painted finish in a scheme that contrasts with siding from the trim as the color renderings suggest. There is more leeway with materials on the sidewalls, but they will be visible and a part of the composition as seen from the street, and it is recommended that all sides of the building match in material and finish, being non-combustible material on the sides notwithstanding." The summary statement that the design reviewer provided is as follows, that the proposed design shows restraint and resists the common temptation to complicate the facade with a mix of materials, textures, and finishes. The building will be clearly contemporary but has skillfully utilized the traditional simple aesthetic that defines the early architecture of Charlottetown. The building will be attractive without competing with the historic and period architecture that surrounds it. So in conclusion, our recommendation to the Design Review Board is as follows. The Planning and Heritage Department encourages the Design Review Board to approve the proposed building facade plans for the proposed 3-story multi-unit residential building that would be located at 33 Weymouth Street, PID numbers 337451 and 337444 in the downtown neighborhood zone as per the design reviewer's recommendation. Furthermore, the Design Review Board's recommendation will be forwarded to the Planning Board outlining their assessment of the site-specific, there's an error there, of the proposed design. And just following this would be a recommendation to Planning Board followed by a consideration to Council. It's a summary of the request and the recommendation. I'll turn it back over to the Chair for any follow-up discussion and questions. Thank you.
David, just for clarification, if the design board accepts staff's recommendation, then it wouldn't go to council, would it? But I think there's something still needs to be completed with a site-specific exemption, and would be what goes back to planning board?
Through the chair, to clarify, actually, there is no, that was an error in my presentation materials, a written error. There's no site-specific exemption involved in this request. The proposed development, it would be able to be done as of right through the existing zoning based on what's shown on the site plan.
Okay.
If the design review board differs in their opinion from what the design reviewer has recommended, then yes, we would have to transfer this to council to make a determination on the design as per what the zoning bylaw says.
But if the board accepts the recommendation of staff, then it ends here?
Correct, that's correct,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, sorry
So-
for the confusion.
Yep, that's okay. I'll just open it up to the floor. Any questions? Go ahead, Aaron.
David, I was just wondering if you can clarify, you didn't, what are the side yard setback requirements in the downtown neighborhood? I didn't think it was in the report. Do you know that off the top of your head?
Through the chair, Aaron, I believe it's 1.83 meters is the side yard setback requirement.
And that is with a 12 and over number. Usually when you're over 12 units, then there's a larger setback, at least in the regular R1 zoning, or sorry, R3 zoning.
Yeah, no, in this case, the downtown neighborhood zone, there is a table in section 29 that, and I missed that one in my table, but it would meet, those are the required setbacks for the permitted uses in the zone, which includes a multi-unit residential development having more than 4 units. That's what that table applies to in section 29, and the side yard setbacks would be met here.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
I believe, Mary, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, David. So I think what I understood the design reviewer to say is that the building should come forward that little bit that you can see on the drawing, and then also drop down a little bit. So what would be the effect on the number of steps? I know he said that the ramp would be lower, but what would be the effect on the number of steps going in? I think there's 4 now.
Yeah, through the chair, if it was pulled closer to the street, there might have to be a reconfiguration of those steps. Maybe there's fewer of them. There's higher risers, perhaps. Like there might have to be some alteration there if the building is pulled forward closer to the street. It could be that maybe the steps are replaced in lieu of a ramp, or the building is. The elevation of the building is reduced, that basically the door sill, the bottom of that first floor would be actually closer to street level perhaps, that the building wouldn't be as elevated. There may have to be some alterations made there, that maybe the steps are even entirely removed perhaps. So.
Yes, that was my understanding from the reviewer, is that their suggestion was that the building be dropped. And so I just wondered if that would actually take it right down to ground level, which would then remove the necessity for the ramp.
Thanks for your question, Mary. We actually have the developer, the applicant here, who can probably clarify that for you. Come on up and see if you can clarify that for Mary.
Yes, my name's Ian Harper. I'm APM's Vice President of Engineering, and I'm also the project manager on this, for this project. Part of my role is managing the design. I do the civil work, which is like designing the grades and so on. And so I've looked at this in detail, and unfortunately, the rendering's a little bit misrepresented in a way that it's up so high. When I do my detailed civil design, the actual grade of this building would be slightly lower than the building to the right that looks orange on the graphic there. So it really would fit very well within the grading scheme there. But as it happens, that building there, in actuality, has 3 steps that goes up to it, the one in orange. Again, whoever did the rendering missed a step when they drew that up. And on the other side, there's actually 2 steps and 4 steps on the gray building, if you want to just point maybe down on the lower left there. So what we're proposing is we'd probably end up with 2 or 3 steps, and not so much a ramp, but a sloped sidewalk to accommodate people who are barrier-free. But really, it should be very in keeping.
Perfect, thank you. So that isn't really an issue, and neither is the moving forward. a little
Right.
bit.
That's correct, Mary.
Okay.
And thank you very much.
Terrific, thank you.
Yep, and thank you for that clarification. Anybody else? Go ahead, Counselor Beck.
Yeah, I love the look of it. I think it's well thought out, and I would agree with Mr. Munn in his assessment there about basically fitting in and reflecting the architectural period and whatnot. My question is about the parking, and I don't know, on page 20, Mr. Munn said there is no parking on site. It is assumed that the requirement for parking for the building has been reconciled with the city. Can we just talk or clarify on that, what that is? I don't know if it's a design element or if it's mentioned in here by the design reviewer, but not that I'm saying that we should be looking for that, but I'm just wondering what is the status on that, or what reconciliation has happened with the city on the parking.
And just before, thank you very much, Norman, or Counselor Beck, for that question. Just before we proceed with it, it's a great question, but is it a question for Design Review Board? I just think it's really important that we have those boundaries here of what is appropriate for here, and if it is, it's a great question. I'd love to know, but not if it's not pertinent to this application at this present time, then I don't know if we should go down that rabbit hole.
Through the chair, we're not here to rule on those requirements. It's really, this is a review of the design as put forward. I did mention some of the zoning requirements here. I didn't mention the parking specifically, but I mean, I'll leave it to the board chair if they feel that this question should be answered. It's a little bit out of scope to what the intent of the design review board is here to rule on, so I'll just leave it at that. So.
Well, if that's the case, it probably should just be omitted from the future reports. You know, there is a connection. I mean, we had similar one with the other Kent Street, Great George Street one, same sort of situation, but this is a little bit different in the sense that I don't think there is any alternative. I don't think there looks like any, and I'm not saying that that should be a barrier to us going ahead or anything like that, but if it doesn't get answered here, where would it get answered, or how? If it doesn't come back to council or anything like that, how do we find anything out?
Well, because the only decision council had to make on this was for lot consolidation, and we've already done that?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. There was a prior lot consolidation that's already been processed through council.
Right.
Just following up on the parking piece, there is permissions in the zoning bylaw to provide cash in lieu for any developments in the downtown core. So that is a way to approach the parking requirements here in lieu of them being unable to provide on-site parking spots. I'll just leave it at that as for an answer and explanation. But again, this did go through a prior process for lot consolidation that was in front of council previously. So
And I would have, if memory, at that time, during lot consolidation, the parking questions could have or would have been addressed at that time, either through the department. Yeah,
yeah, through the chair, that's correct. That prior process did allow council opportunity to ask that question. I can't recall if it was asked or not at that point.
I don't recall that, but wouldn't the parking come once you have a design concept and you have the number of units that you're looking at having and all that? All we did was a lot consolidation back then. We didn't really look at anything. We were just,
the only reason we didn't have to is because the rest of it was an as of right. So therefore, council doesn't make the decision on the size of and scope of the building. We had lot consolidation, and then we had design review because it's in the 500 lot. So council doesn't get to weigh in on the rest of it. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's essentially correct because, again, the design as put forward, it has the ability to meet all the zoning requirements. And in lieu of meeting the parking ratios, there is an allowance for cash in lieu of parking for developments in the downtown, so.
what does that mean exactly, Dave? Cash in lieu, what do
Well,
they do?
Yeah, through the chair, what that means, Councillor Beck, is that if a development's unable to provide for parking on site, they can provide cash to the city for spaces that are provided elsewhere through public parking facilities, whether that's on-street or off-street parking garages. So it's in recognition in the downtown that there's spaces at a premium, and it's not always possible to provide parking cost effectively on a site in the downtown, given the physical constraints of many properties downtown. So there's a built-in provisions in the zoning bylaw to find an alternative way to provide necessary parking in an alternative format off-site, so.
Okay, so again, I asked the question, when would we find out what that would be? Like, because you were saying earlier, Deputy, that
yeah.
it doesn't come back. This may not come back to us really at
I think that if
anywhere.
this is just I mean, anybody could probably get clarification from the planning department, but that door is closed for us in terms of council, because at the time of the lot consolidation would have been the clarification on the whole parking in lieu. And parking in lieu is something, if we want more information on it, it's something we could bring back to our Planning and Heritage Committee for a discussion on parking in lieu, if we're trying to get clarification on what that actually means and how that works in the downtown core. And David, if you have anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah, through the chair, and I'm not trying to dance around the issue, I guess I'm just trying to answer it as best I can, but the cash in lieu piece for parking would be codified through a future development agreement, but that, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have to come back to council in this case. So there's no further planning approvals that I'm aware of that would be needed here. That would have to go either run through planning board or council at this point, provided tonight the design review board agrees with the recommendations of the design reviewer. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that, David. Any other questions? Councillor McCabe, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
And anything else from you, Mary?
No, nothing.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you so much. So we have a recommendation from the Planning and Heritage Department to encourage the Design Review Board to approve the proposed building facade plans for the proposed three-story multi-unit residential building located at 33 Weymouth in the downtown neighborhood, as per the Design Reviewer's recommendations. Furthermore, the Design Review Board's recommendations will be forwarded to the Planning Board outlining their assessment of the, oh, right, that's wrong. That was a mistake. There's no site-specific exemption in there.
Correct, yep.
Okay. So basically, the Planning and Heritage Department are encouraging Design Review to support their recommendation, which is to support this design based on the Design Reviewer's two recommendations. So does somebody want to, okay, moved by Councillor Beck, seconded by Aaron. So the resolution is on the floor. Does anyone have any questions on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor? Mary
Yes.
and Councillor McCabe?
Yes, in favor.
Great, thank you, folks, for that. So therefore, because we have accepted staff's recommendation, this is where this file will end. And the next item on the agenda is introduction of new business. And if there is none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Beck, seconded by Aaron. All those in favor? Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thanks, you too. Bye.